Hey everybody, welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. Today on the show, we are kicking off the 2026 midterm elections. Voters in Texas, North Carolina, and Arkansas are heading to the polls for the first primaries of the year. How could these races shape the battle for control of the House and the Senate in November? Our very own Steve Kornacki joins us for a preview before a special live episode of Here's the Scoop tonight. But first, the war with Iran is rapidly expanding throughout the region. The U.S. is urging Americans in the Middle East to depart now. Following an Iranian drone attack on the U.S. embassy in Saudi Arabia, the State Department has ordered non-emergency personnel out of 6 Gulf states. Meanwhile, Israel has launched a new military operation in Lebanon, taking on the Iran-backed Hezbollah group. In talking about the origin of this war, President Trump said today that the U.S. attacked Iran because, quote, I thought we were going to have a situation where we were going to be attacked. Then went on to say Iran was, quote, getting ready to attack Israel and others. So we're digging into what intel may have driven President Trump's thinking, along with what the rapid escalation means for the broader region. For that, I want to bring in NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel, who's on the ground for us in Tel Aviv. Hi, Richard.
Hey, Yasmin, it's great to talk to you.
I mentioned that you were coming to us from Israel, which has been fending off hits from not only Iran, but also Iranian proxy Hezbollah. This has now pulled Lebanon into the conflict. What do we know about the Israeli campaign there?
So the campaign in Lebanon is expanding, and it is also a ground offensive. Israel, Hezbollah, and Lebanon have a long and tortured history. Hezbollah, always backed by Iran, supported by Iran, also a Shia group, similar ideology, stayed out of this war, this recent war, for the first couple of days. Just the other day, Hezbollah fired some rockets at Israel, 6, according to one count, and that was a trigger. And Israel said, okay, we're not taking this, we're not tolerating this, and they went on the offensive and started bombing in South Lebanon, in Beirut, and attacked a number of Hezbollah targets. And the Israeli military presence, the occupation of Lebanese territory, expanded. So Israeli forces took more of southern Lebanon and carried out wide-ranging attacks against Hezbollah across the country.
The State Department has now shut down embassies in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, urging Americans to evacuate from 14 countries. The president was asked today, Richard, why they didn't have an evacuation plan for Americans in the region. This is what he said.
Well, because it happened all very quickly. We thought, and I thought maybe more so than most, I could ask Marco, but I thought we were going to have a situation where we were going to be attacked. They were getting ready to attack Israel.
Richard, this is different from what we heard yesterday from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He said Israel was planning on a preemptive strike. What does this tell you about the origin of this war?
Just yesterday, Marco Rubio said that the war began because Israel was going to strike first, and therefore the United States had to join this campaign. Otherwise, the U.S. would be caught flat-footed, could be attacked, and would be on the defensive, and therefore it was better to join with Israel, strike first, strike hard, and achieve the element of surprise and seize the initiative. That was the story yesterday. President Trump, just a short while ago, had a different story. He said that it was Iran that was going to attack the United States first. So the origin of story of this war has changed radically in just 24 hours. That is extraordinarily important. Go back to Iraq in 2003. The Bush administration tried to build a case. They argued that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. They had Colin Powell address the UN. They tried to build a case before going into this war of regime change, which lasted, as we all know, a very long time. This time, 2 origin stories in 2 days. I've been speaking to negotiators. I just yesterday spoke to one of the negotiators directly involved in these talks, and he said that the talks were actually making progress, that they were supposed to resume again. I got no indication that Iran was imminently going to attack the United States. I have not seen any intelligence reports that suggest that Iran was about to launch an imminent attack. I was just in Iran. I spoke to Iranian officials. They told me they wanted to negotiate. Now, they could have been lying, but I'm not sure if they were in a position to take on the United States and Israel with a preemptive strike.
It also seemed as if the president alluded to not knowing how this war would end or not knowing what would come next politically, which is going to leave Iranians inside the country in a lurch.
The end goal that President Trump is describing today was ambiguous. By his own description, it was ambiguous. When he was asked, who's going to take over? He said, well, we don't really know. Somebody better. And he described how this should have been done a long time ago. And he was talking very nostalgically about Venezuela, how that was such a successful campaign and that Maduro was removed and the government stayed intact. And now everybody's making lots of money. And he talked about how Iraq was such a disaster and how all the mistakes that were made there. But when pressed, who's going to take over? Could it be the Shah's son? Do you have any names in mind? He said he didn't have any names in mind. He said they had some names in mind, but that they were killed along with the leaders and that maybe someone else could emerge. And he said, well, the biggest risk is that maybe someone emerges that's even worse. But this war should have been done a long time ago, and we're having great success smashing the Iranian military.
So with all of this gray surrounding this war with Iran now, I mentioned it is spilling beyond the borders of Iran into Lebanon. We now have Americans being urged late Monday to, quote unquote, depart now from Bahrain, Egypt, Iraq, Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Qatar. We could go on and on. The entire Middle East, really. Many of these countries, allies to the United States. What is their thinking? What are you hearing from your sources there when it comes to this war with Iran?
There's deep concern. There's deep concern that the region is being plunged into chaos with no clear plan of what the next day looks like. And that doesn't mean the Arab countries they love Iran or they hate Israel or love Israel. It's just a concern about the level of destruction and the level of ambiguity that is out there. And no stock market likes ambiguity. No country likes ambiguity. Many of these Gulf countries hosted American troops for their own protection. They thought having American bases on their soil would protect them. And now those bases have become magnets. And they are now drawn into this conflict. Qatar, for example, was trying to negotiate a peace deal between President Trump and Iran. Now, Qatar is directly involved, and Qatar says, well, we're not joining this fight, but we're protecting our own sovereignty because Qatar was attacked by Iranian jets, which they shot down, and now Qatar has attacked Iran directly. So it is a Mideast war that many countries in the Middle East say they did not want to be part of and that they do not want to participate in now, but they were attacked and they are defending themselves, and Iran's military is being decimated. That is absolutely the case. And there's war in Dubai, there's war in Qatar, there's war in Kuwait, there's war here in Israel, there's war all across the region. And people, country leaders that I'm speaking to, and I'm speaking to quite a few senior leaders who are not fans of Iran, are worried about how the chaos ends.
Richard Engel, thank you.
Absolutely.
After our conversation with Richard, the State Department said they are actively helping Americans book commercial flights in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, and Egypt, where air travel is not available. It is arranging routes through third countries and expanding ground transportation options for those seeking to leave Israel as well. It is the first big primary day of midterm season, and lawmakers in both parties are facing a reckoning within their own ranks. The race that's got everybody's attention, the battle for Texas Senator John Cornyn's seat. Republican candidates are vying to convince voters that they're the most MAGA, while Democrats think they can use that chaos to potentially flip the seat for the first time in 3 decades. In the House, the GOP is hoping to gain 5 seats in Texas after they redrew the congressional map last year, but will it work? We're going to be covering the primaries in Texas, North Carolina, and Arkansas tonight in a live special on NBC News Now and on YouTube. I'll be there with several of NBC News' sharpest political minds, including NBC News chief data analyst Steve Kornacki, who is joining us now for an early preview of the night. Hey, Steve.
Excited to get the primary season underway.
Me too. I am as well. I've been cramming. I've been in a major cram studying sesh. But let's talk about the Texas Senate primary first. It is kind of the big one tonight, right? The Senate race has drawn the most eyes and the most money, by the way. It is the most expensive primary in history. I think Ad Impact is tracking at $125 million spent on ads so far. On the Republican side, you got Senator John Cornyn, four-term incumbent, establishment-ish, right? You got Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. You have U.S. Representative Wesley Hunt as well. Then for the Dems, you have Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She is considered a fighter, to say the least. And you have State Senator James Tallarico, who is seen as more of a moderate.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few reasons. I mean, I think the headline, not to lose in this, is Cornyn himself is in grave danger of being denied renomination by his party. There has not been a sitting senator who's had that happen to him in 14 years. Now, that may not happen tonight the way Texas works with the runoff system. If nobody gets a clear majority, an outright majority in the Republican primary, the top two go to a runoff. The expectation, I think, is that Cornyn and Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, will be the top two. But even if that is what happens tonight, how they stack up is really going to set the stage for that runoff. I mean, if Cornyn is a distant second here, he's in really a terrible place going into the runoff. If he does surprisingly well, if he were to finish ahead of Paxton, ever tonight, he might have some, new momentum, show some new strength. So I think that's that's a major story in and of itself. And then I think related to that is we know that the Democratic base is super, super into politics and elections these days. We see it every time there's any kind of election. They turn out in droves. And the dream of the Democratic base nationally forever has been to flip Texas. And so it seems like every 2 years you get this story of, can the Democrats do it this time?
I know, we've talked about this before. It's the white whale for the Dems.
Yeah, and they have nationally, certainly, I think, there's perhaps more interest in Tallarico. They've a lot of folks nationally have kind of keyed in on him as their hope for this year. But I think very related to their hope for flipping Texas is the outcome of that Republican primary. They hope that Paxton beats Cornyn. They think that Paxton, who went through a 10-year legal battle over securities fraud charges, who was impeached by the Republican legislature in 2023, not convicted in the state Senate, but they think he is a ripe target in the general election and that they could potentially make it a game if Ken Paxton's the Republican nominee. So I think that's really juiced that typical Democratic interest in Texas that you always see.
And then the electability really of Jasmine Crockett and Tallarico, they feel as if it is Ken Paxton, it seems like Democrats feel more confident with a Tallarico versus Ken Paxton versus a Jasmine Crockett versus Ken Paxton, if in fact that was the eventual makeup.
Yeah, you hear that. And I think that's the national folks. I mean, a huge part of this, you talk about the money, is the national money coming into this, the national media attention that's come on this race, on these candidates. I will say, I don't think you really see it in the polling yet. When you look at prospective general election polling, I think there's a case that the Tallarico skeptics make that, policy-wise, he really isn't different than Crockett. It's not like there are major issues dividing them. I mean, he may give nods to the concept of unity in his rhetoric, but it's not really, there's no deep ideological difference between them. And I think a lot of the Tallarico skeptics would simply say he in many ways is a type of candidate who Democrats have tried in Texas now several times and have not had success with statewide.
Yeah, obviously we're going to be watching all that. The other thing that we're going to be watching when it comes to Texas is how this redistricting is going to play out. We remember, right, Texas making headlines. You had state Republicans passing this new congressional map that was designed to help them pick up 5 more seats in Congress. What are the things, Steve, that we need to be watching for tonight, that you're going to be watching for tonight when it comes to redistricting, especially as we look towards November?
Yeah, where we're really looking, I think, tonight is in deep South Texas, kind of along the border, because that's where there are two districts down there. One of them is not really going to be that interesting tonight, but it will be in November. It's the district that's held by Henry Cuellar. He's a conservative Democrat. He's gotten a lot of attention nationally for being probably the most hawkish Democrat in the House when it comes to the border, when it comes to immigration. He had faced, a federal indictment. Trump gave him a pardon a few months ago. Trump was upset that Cuellar decided to go forward and run again as a Democrat. But that's one of the districts that Republicans made a little bit more Republican friendly. That's one to keep an eye on in November. The other one down there tonight to keep an eye on in deep South Texas is Vicente Gonzalez. Again, this is a Democrat, a border district, Brownsville, Texas here, right on the U.S.-Mexico border. Gonzalez had a very close call in 2024. He has positioned himself on cultural issues much more as a moderate, even a conservative, relative to the national party in response to how the politics of South Texas have been changing. Very competitive Republican primary. And that's a district that Republicans were also pretty aggressive in redrawing the lines in to try to help themselves actually oust Gonzalez. So we're going to find out who Republicans go with in that race. That'll be one of the most closely watched races in the country this fall. That could be an incumbent who loses.
So we talked a lot about Texas, but North Carolina is happening tonight too. They got 14 House races, a Senate seat that's going to be up for grabs. Senator Tom Tillis retiring. What are you watching for there tonight?
Again, this could become a theme tonight. First of all, a big theme is how many incumbents. I mentioned Cornyn. I just mentioned Gonzalez in Texas. There's another in Texas, maybe in Dan Crenshaw. And I think North Carolina, the 4th district. This is Raleigh, Chapel Hill. This is an overwhelmingly Democratic congressional district, but the incumbent Democratic congresswoman there, Valerie Foushee, is also in grave danger of losing her primary tonight. She's being challenged by a county commissioner from Durham County named Anita Alam, who ran against Foushee when this seat was first up in 2022. She is endorsed by Bernie Sanders. She's running, as far to the left as possible. And a major issue in this has been the role of AIPAC, pro-Israel money, which had supported Foushee in the past in that 2022 campaign. She's tried to distance herself from that in this campaign, I think sensing the danger, sensing the climate within her party changing on that. That's a race where I think we'll start to get some returns pretty early, and I think is another incumbent who could go down.
So, Steve, when you put this all together, right, obviously this is all leading towards November. What could we take away from tonight's results, not only as a country, but also if you have the Republicans and the Democrats looking at what comes out of tonight to look forward to come November and what the expectations are over the next few months in this primary season?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some of these. The one in North Carolina I just talked about is very much about the temperature within the Democratic Party, the Democratic base. And we've started to see these. We talked, I think I was on with you a few weeks ago talking about a race in the suburbs of New Jersey in a Democratic primary where a Sanders AOC-backed candidate was able to win. I mean, that is something you wouldn't have seen in a place like that. Not that long ago. You're starting to see it now. That wing of the party, is it ascendant? Does it put another win on the board tonight? What is the temperature in the party? Is that where it is? So it's another data point for that. And on the Republican side in Texas, again, Cornyn running without Trump's endorsement. I mentioned Dan Crenshaw, the congressman from the Houston area, Republican congressman, the only Republican incumbent congressman in Texas running without Trump's endorsement too. What does that look like in both of those races? I mentioned the Cornyn one. We know his situation. Crenshaw. Can Crenshaw win without without Trump's backing? Does he get knocked off? Is he another incumbent? So I think that's certainly something we're looking at too. And then also, obviously, just what does that Texas race look like heading into November? Does it look like a race that after this primary, Democrats still think they have a shot to win, are still going to pour a ton of money into? And what will Republicans do in response to that?
Oh, the Democrats want Texas so bad. It's thirsty. Let's be honest. It's thirsty. Speaking of thirsty, what are you going to be drinking tonight when you're on the Kornacki cam? I mean, what is your drink of choice as you're going to go from who knows how long, right? 7:30 on. You're going to be live up on the Kornacki cam on YouTube. What are you drinking in that mug of yours?
Water. It's just no food. Just the food slows me down, so just water and
just good old-fashioned water.
Stay hydrated, but not so hydrated I have to take a break. So.
Exactly. By the way, if you have questions for Steve, you can leave it in the comments of our YouTube channel. He's going to be on with us tonight as well for our live Here's the Scoop election special. We'll be streaming on NBC News Now. You can tune in starting around 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Steve Kornacki, thank you, and we'll see you tonight.
You got it, Yaz. Good luck.
All right, that is going to do it for us. Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever the day may bring. And if you like what you heard, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, join us tonight for our live broadcast of Here's the Scoop on our YouTube page beginning around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Inside Scoop. It is a deeper dive on the main stories of the day that comes out every weeknight straight to your inbox. You can sign up for The Inside Scoop as part of our paid subscription at NBCnews.com. All right, that's enough promos. We'll see you tomorrow.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.